Good morning, guys. Friday the 13th here in central Illinois. May I say it again? The most corrupt and bankrupt state in the union. I do love that. I really do. I did a 1.5 mile walk this morning, 15 degrees, made a very fast walk. I do a 1.5 miles every morning. The roads are a little icy, but not icy enough to fall and break a hip, which is what I'm afraid of being an old codger. But I just wanted to put this in your line of vision for a second. If you're interested in homemade and kit bashed standard gauge equipment, you absolutely need this book. All right, enough said for the advertisement there. Oh, and by the way, I get no residuals from that. I'm just pushing it because I think it's a great thing. But what we're looking at today is something a little bit different. I've got my trees all up. I've been working hard for 3 days, and believe it or not, the trees have kicked my butt, and I need to kick back and just relax a little bit and have fun. So I'm going to give you a little bit of history, some of it nice, some of it sad. But it all deals with electric trains and the boys who played with them and then grew up to be men, unfortunately. But what we've got here is I have European 1 gauge, Markland, Bing, a couple others. It's basically the only 1 gauge that I've got. I've got a few more cars, but it's the only Bing European outline engine that I have that's in 1 gauge. And it really does a nice job. They're very cool when they're going around the track, and I don't run them very often, so I thought I'd go ahead and put them on here and we would run that. The other thing is, these are Bing. They were 1 gauge, but Bing, because 1 gauge basically was dead in the United States after the First World War, they sold their cars with standard gauge trucks. So I was lucky enough to pick these two up. They make a number of them. They make, I believe it's a Budweiser car with the beer blacked out. I'd love to have one. I just refuse to pay the kind of money that they're asking for them. But they are absolutely awesome. I believe they also made a Pabst Blue Ribbon. So you can get a number of beer cars. This just happens to be Swiss Premium Hams and Dutch Cleanser. The other thing that I've done is we saw this run the other day with the Bing. I'm sorry, not the Bing, but the Markland locomotive on it. Today I hooked it up to my Bing 1 gauge, and we're running it on 1 gauge track. And I personal opinion, of course, but I firmly believe that this is the finest cast iron locomotive that was ever made. I think they're far superior, looks-wise, far superior to anything that I've made. And while I very much like Lionel early standard gauge, I think this is far more realistic with still a touch of toy to it. So here again, I would definitely take an early Lionel, a 5, a 51, or a 7, or a 6. I don't necessarily have to have the brass one. I don't want to pay that kind of money, but I do like the Russian, the blue iron boilers on that thing. They're really nice. And with the Bing, we're pulling it by one of my kit bashed electrics. The other thing I have here, this is a Vodamp reproduction, and it was made by a guy by the name of Joe Feeney. I think I'm pronouncing it right. He still makes stuff, but he made this for standard gauge. And I've always wanted to buy some of his stuff. This is really, really well made, and what's interesting, he did it just like Vodamp. That thing is screwed into, it's got a wooden frame underneath of it. It's not metal. It's all mounted on wood, which the originals were mounted that way. But it's a nice pleasing piece. Here again, it's what I call a shorty. Vodamp made it this way, and that's how they sold it. They also sold cabooses and stuff with 2 sets of trucks. The other thing that I've got, this was a kit bash that I had bought a number of years ago. Some of you guys have seen it run. Some of you haven't. Maybe some of this is repetitious. I don't know. But I picked this up. This is a shortened, I think it's a 384. I don't know how the guy did it. I actually bought it because I was going to replicate the drivetrain in it. I'm not the machinist that this guy was. This is all driven by an O gauge, a small O gauge motor that's bolted to us inside of a frame. It has one gear on the drive wheel, the back drive wheel. The other wheels are all loose, and the rods apply the pressure, just like a real steam engine. It didn't come with a tender. I found I think this is a manufacturer. I'm not sure. I don't know if it's embossed on the underneath side or not, but it's either a pre-1918 or a post-1918. Any way you look at it, it's one of their old slope backs. I bought this. It virtually had no paint on it, none whatsoever. And I went ahead and painted it, rubber stamped it, and made it the mate to this little switcher engine, which is quite cool. And the rest of the junk on here is just stuff that I have made either by scratch or I have kit bashed. For instance, this Shorty cattle car. That's a 13. And what's neat about the 13 is it's two pieces soldered onto a frame. So you unsolder it, you can make two Shorty boxcars if you want. Now, of course, I cut the hole in there, and there is a, see if I can get it to, there we go. I manufactured a door. Actually, I took a real door and I cut it down to size and put rails on the back side. The gondola is completely scratch built. The Ives Coke car is scratch built. Oh, these are easy things. Anybody can do it. Believe me, if I can do it, Stevie Wonder can do it. There's no doubt about it. He's blind, for crying out loud. So, yeah, this is just easy stuff to make. The other stuff that I got here, and the reason I got it out is because this is a hell of a movie. This is about the 1914 Christmas ceasefire that actually the troops started. The command had nothing to do with it. This is an absolutely great movie. And right here are original 1914 Princess Mary Christmas tins. They're embossed. They got the date, and they've got all the allies who were fighting. There's France. There's other countries that are stamped on the four corners. These were given to the troops at Christmas time. Of course, every young man went off to this great adventure because everybody said the war will be over by Christmas. Wrong. There were 3 more Christmases to come in mass slaughter. Now, if you're wondering why I've got this stuff out here, it's because so much of this stuff was played with by the same individuals that met each other across the field of combat. You've got German boys playing with the German trains. You got American boys playing with the Lionel and all the other stuff. And they went from being boys to men. And sometimes it's not a pretty thing. So for me, it's always like I'm on holy ground when I hold this stuff. I understand the history behind it. And sometimes the history makes me sad, very sad. Even with these trains, which are a source of joy, they were a source of joy to the kids at that time. I oftentimes hold something and wonder if the boy that had it, did he land on the beach at D-Day? Did he get off the beach? Maybe the German boy, what happened to him? Did he go to the Russian front? Did he survive the brutality of that war? So there's a lot of mixed emotions when I'm playing with this stuff. Well, enough of looking back. Let's look at today. Now, I'm going to run this stuff separately because it's real hard to run everybody at the same time while it gives a great effect. I've only got one wire feeding this stuff, so you get to the far end, it loses a little bit of power. Well, you kick it up, and when it gets up to here, it's running wide open, and I definitely do not want a wreck. So we'll start with the 1 gauge here on top first. This is a nice outfit. Like I say, you've already seen the cars before. Some of the cars are completely scratch built. One is Markland, the other 2 are Ives. But they really make a nice American outline, an early freight, a 1900 turn-of-the-century freight train. I love it. I take it easy. This 1 gauge track is homemade. I made it all by converting from standard to 1 gauge, and it works well. Not only that, it mates with real 1 gauge track, so you can't complain about that. In the center there is a German cook stove, a little girl's stove from around 1900. That would be part of Christmas. And then I've got to ask myself, did these kids survive the Spanish flu? Did influenza end their lives early? Yeah, this is a nice running outfit. Okay, now we're going to run the Bing, and of course we're running it on the 5-rail track. Now, this particular locomotive has spoon collectors, so sometimes you'll see fire pop up out underneath of it because it will touch one of the grounding rails. If it had rollers, you wouldn't have that problem. But it still operates well, and it's hard to imagine. Those cars pull hard. And that's not a very heavy engine, but it does a magnificent job. I could put more on there, but it does a magnificent job with this. So here we go. Takes a lot of voltage for this. That's a 20-volt motor. And there we go. Now we'll run some of the homemade stuff. I've got the Bing on the outside set. It ain't gonna take a header off the layout anytime soon, I don't think. That little switcher locomotive does a really great job, and it's really heavy. It's got a lot of pulling power for such a small motor. It really does. I can pull 500 series cars with it with no problem. And you can see the sparks fly out from underneath the Bing every once in a while. I love doing this stuff. I really do. The ozone is just unbelievable. This electric was the very first thing I ever built as far as a locomotive goes. And all that is a 117 caboose that I chopped up, added cow catchers, added an extra window, added a roof, added a pantograph. They're very versatile. They do a nice job. The other thing I'll show you, and then we're done for the day, is this particular knife right here. This knife is from the 10th Mountain Division. They were in Italy, I believe. Bob Dole, if you know who Bob Dole was in that division. They were ski-mounted troops. This on the ring is marked U.S. Now, this knife was not made after the Second World War. There are no reproductions of this. It's got a can opener. If you see that Phillips, that was to tighten the straps on their skis. There's also a leather punch in it. Basically, it's a Swiss Army knife. for the U.S. Army. So that's where we're at with this stuff. I hope you enjoyed it. I love talking. Wish I could get paid to talk, but I would highly recommend this if you're interested. It's a really well done movie. So you guys be safe. It is Friday the 13th. Bad things can happen, and we will talk with you later. Enjoy the weekend. Toodaloo.